Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. What's going on out there right here in downtown Northport? You're watching the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. I am, of course, Joe Gaither. You can follow me at Joe Gaither6 on all the social media machines, Instagram, social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can follow the show right there at Joe Gaither6 or anywhere at BamaCentral.com. Of course, we are a proud part of the BamaCentral.com broadcasting network with Blue Collar Unplugged, and it's time to get another week rolling. Blue Collar Unplugged just dropped a new episode, so you make sure you guys go subscribe to what they've got going on at Blue Collar Unplugged as they rolled out. I think it's episode number 3 for the basketball season with Blake Byler, Jacob Pickle, and Matthew Gibson. You can find them as well on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon right there at BamaCentral.com. So right there where you can find us as well. And, welcome to another week. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully you had a great weekend. There was a lot of good Alabama athletics to talk about. There's a lot of good things to recap from the weekend. Alabama's 49-21 victory over the Kentucky Wildcats, and Alabama basketball's 2-0 start over the week. Obviously, we already talked about last Monday's victory over Morehead State, but the Crimson Tide played on Friday against Indiana State, winning 102-80. So they have taken a 2-0 start. So we are here to recap it all right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. So what do you want to get started with? Let's start, of course, with football. You can leave a comment on the Facebook side of things as we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You are listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. If you're listening to us on Playback, send this to a friend, and we'll get the show rolling right here. Alabama's 49-21 win over the Kentucky Wildcats, and it's all about Jalen Milroe. It's all about responding to the victory, beating LSU the week earlier. How does Alabama respond to the 11 a.m. kickoff against an inferior opponent that the Kentucky Wildcats are? And come on, let's all just be honest with ourselves. Kentucky is inferior to Alabama. And they came into the game as an 11-point underdog. So Alabama really needing to show that they were that strong. If you want to be a contender, go ahead and take them out, win on the line. And that's exactly what Alabama did. What did they do differently than a couple of weeks earlier when they played Arkansas for homecoming? They got off to a big lead. They let Arkansas get back into it. They let Arkansas make it into a game again. And obviously they won. They beat Arkansas in that game. But things got a little tighter than they needed to against the Arkansas Razorbacks on homecoming in a similar situation, 11 a.m. game against an inferior opponent. That time it was at home. This time on the road in Lexington, Alabama jumps out and scores on its first 3 offensive drives and scores touchdowns on its first 4 of its first 5 offensive drives. So a pretty good little start for Alabama, getting off to a 21-0 start, and then Kentucky digging in, getting back at 21-7, then Alabama kind of getting back up at 28-7, and from there the route was on, getting up to 49-21 throughout the course of the game. Alabama defense coming away with stops, with an interception, with a forced fumble. Terry and Arnold having a great game. Jalen Milroe with 6 total touchdowns, becoming, I think it was the first quarterback to go 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns in a game in an Alabama uniform. So come on, Jalen Milroe and this team offensively really finding itself. I think last week's game against LSU showing them how important it was to start off very quickly, and that's exactly what they did against inferior competition. Jalen Milroe finding the end zone 6 different times with 6 out of the first 7 drives. He touched the football, and then Jamarian Miller scoring as well to give Alabama its 7th touchdown of the day. And so, Alabama, they clinched the SEC West and a chance to totally sleepwalk through the day. They did not. They slept. They basically got up to Lexington and handled their business. The defense ended up holding them to just a 3 of 11 from third down, and ended up basically outplaying Kentucky through the entire game, holding Kentucky to just 95 yards rushing, and that's what they wanted to do with Ray Davis, holding them to just 11 first downs. They ended up with what? They ended up in the red zone just 4 times on the day, getting those 3 touchdowns, but getting 2 turnovers, holding the turnover advantage over Kentucky, and basically going up to Lexington and handling their business, and letting all the Alabama fans get off to their Saturday, and basically to a nice day. So, look, Alabama is in the SEC championship game. There's 2 more games left. Alabama's playing UTC this weekend. It's going to be a cakewalk game for the Crimson Tide. You might see Ty Simpson get a lot of action, which Ty Simpson got a little bit of action this past week with a little bit of a Jalen Milroe injury. You might see Ty Simpson get a lot of action against UT Chattanooga, and then it's going to be over to Auburn to finish out the year. Really, the rest of the season is going to be on Alabama finishing out the season against inferior competition. And they took a really nice step in doing that, beating Kentucky this weekend 49-21, really holding Kentucky down throughout the early part of the game, limiting them to 1 touchdown through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, their first 8 drives. And so getting up on them a pretty good margin before they got to halftime, and still keeping them down to holding to just 2 touchdowns in the second half. So it was a good day for the Crimson Tide. They're on to UT Chattanooga, but really all eyes are going to be on the Iron Bowl and finishing out the SEC season undefeated, because tomorrow night's playoff run, tomorrow night's playoff poll, it'll be the 3rd playoff poll of the 2023 season. And Alabama was still 8th in last week's playoff poll. Right there, playoff poll, college football playoff rankings. I guess we didn't have it printed right there. Alabama is still 8th in, there we go, college football playoff rankings. That's what I wanted. They're still 8th. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3, Florida 4, Washington 5, Oregon 6, Texas 7, Alabama 8, Ole Miss 9, Penn State 10. So you didn't get any favors from Penn State this past weekend. They lost to Michigan, and then Ole Miss lost a big game to Georgia as well. Texas almost got upset by TCU. Oregon played kind of a close game with USC, but it ended up beating them. Utah played a close game with Washington. Washington won. Florida State won a close rivalry game. And then Ohio State beat the brakes off of Michigan State. So Alabama didn't get any help through from the other opponents from the top 7 schools. So the Crimson Tide still has to continue to win. And I think, as I've said earlier on the program, that Alabama's biggest hope this season is for Georgia to keep winning, and Alabama to get Georgia undefeated in the college football in the SEC championship game. And that way Alabama can sneak in on the last day of the season. All right, so the Alabama football team wasn't the only team that was in action. It wasn't the only Alabama team that was in action over the weekend. Alabama basketball took place, and had their second game this weekend on Friday, beating Indiana State 102-80. And I had the pleasure to be there with Blake Byler and with Will Miller, and we got to be in the Coleman Coliseum watching a new team kind of gel together as Aaron Estrada and Grant Nelson had another set of good games again, this time along with Mark Sears once again. The three of them going for over 20 points. That's how you get, to a team total of 102. Estrada with 27, Sears with 24, and Grant with 20 points. Grant Nelson with 20 points. The three of them together really forming a three-headed monster. They got a little Rylan Griffin worked in there. They got a little Jaron Stevenson worked in there as well, as several players showing that they can be dangerous. Latrell Wrightsell with 8 points as well. And Muhammad Wagay with 6 points. So Alabama really showing that they can get things done, shooting 70%, 60%, 56% from the 3-point line, 13 of 23. So a really high percentage. And Coach Oates really talking about wanting to even shoot for more threes than the 23 they've gotten up. And so Alabama still getting going on the early part of the basketball season, showing a little bit of, showing a lot of strength on the offensive end, getting over 100 points through the season's first 2 games. First time doing that since 1964, 1965. Really exciting to see the Alabama basketball team getting going early. They're going to take on South Alabama next on Tuesday night. So we'll be there for BamaCentral.com. They're going to take on South Alabama, team who last year I went down to watch them play South Alabama down in Mobile. And that was a fun little evening, a fun little trip for myself and a couple coworkers getting down there. And Alabama won that game, a close little game. And so it'll be interesting to see what South does. They're going to be a competitive team, probably the most competitive game that Alabama has played this season as far as talent-wise goes. Alabama, was just better than Indiana State. Now, Indiana State had several players that get shot pretty nicely. Isaiah Swope ended up with 17 points. He was 4 of 6 from the 3-point line. Ryan Conwell was 4 of 8 from the 3-point line. He had 16 points. And Jason Kent had 14 points. So they had a couple of different guys. Julian Larry had 15. They had a couple of different guys that got after it on the offensive end. I really felt like Alabama didn't really defend very well, and Coach Oates echoed that in his post-game comments, giving up 1.12 points per possession to the Sycamores, but just showing really strong offensive effort. So this Alabama team showing that they can get to 100 points in 2 consecutive nights. It'll be interesting to see if they continue to just show the ability to, hey, we don't care about defense, or we don't have to care as much, we should say, about defense, because we're just going to outscore you. I mean, a couple nights in a row, getting to breaking the century mark, the 3 guys. I mean, Estrada has shown that he can score from any place on the court. He had great 3-point shooting this past game. What did he have? Estrada. He was 6 of 8. Yeah, 6 of 8 from the 3-point line on Friday night. Look, that guy can fill up the buckets. I think he's a really special player. Coach Oates said that the rotation was slimmed down just a little bit on Friday night because of defending. It's saying that Sam Walters and Jaron Stevenson didn't play near as much because of defending. Walters only played 9 minutes, and Jaron Stevenson did get double-digit minutes. He played 18 minutes, but Coach Oates saying this morning over the Mal Moore Center that his playing time was diminished because of failure to defend against the Sycamores on Friday night. So it's going to be interesting to see what Alabama basketball does the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. Alabama basketball taking on South Alabama, as we said, on Tuesday at 7 p.m. over in Coleman Coliseum. We hope to see you guys there supporting the Crimson Tide live and in person. If you can't make it, you can follow along the live updates on BamaCentral.com. That's where I was on Friday night for Bama Central. We did live updates. We were in the press room, and we did a little courtside broadcast, a small little courtside broadcast, all of which you can find on BamaCentral.com with our friends Blake Byler and Will Miller from this past Friday night. On Tuesday, we'll have Alabama against South Alabama, and then on Friday, Alabama will be playing again. They'll be playing against Mercer on Friday at 7 o'clock. So another kind of easier bye game against the Mercer Bears before they have a bit tougher competition the next Friday. Thanksgiving week, they're going to be taking on Ohio State, and then they'll either play Oregon or Santa Clara down in Destin, Florida at the Emerald Coast Classic. So a little bit of an easy schedule, kind of a ramp up to play Oregon and to play Ohio State and then Oregon and Santa Clara. But they really, in December, early part of December, they ramp up. They're playing Purdue, Creighton, and Arizona, 3 top 10 teams back to back to back. So that's going to be and all on the road or all at neutral site games. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll really get to know Alabama basketball the first week of December. Alabama basketball going to spend the rest of November kind of getting to know one another. There's going to be a couple of challenges with Ohio State, with Clemson in the mix. Then we'll see if they'll either play Oregon or Santa Clara. Those will be good little challenges, but several little bye games left to go. South Alabama, Mercer, Arkansas State, all kind of worked out some sort of home and home deals or bye games. And you can see them again on Tuesday, right there at 7 o'clock in Coleman Coliseum. Look, and you really need to see this team. Grant Nelson, they can score. Now I will say I'm with Coach Oates. The defending wasn't that great for me. On Friday night, but then on offense as well, I asked Blake Bywood this: was the offense that great? Is the offense that great because they scored over in triple digits, or is it that good because the guys with the basketball in certain situations, Grant Nelson, Aaron Estrada, or Mark Sears, are just better than the guys that they played against and or made great one-on-one plays and one-on-one shots? Now, they made shots, like I said, with 56% from behind the arc. Aaron Estrada was 6 of 8 from behind the arc. They made some plays. Grant Nelson was, he was 7 of 10 overall in the game. No 3-point shots, but 7 of 10. He was 6 of 6 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds as well. So he got after it for his 20 points. Mark Sears, 3 of 4 from behind the line. So he made some shots as well. Did the guys just make shots, or was it good overall offensive play? And Blake said, it's good overall offensive play because they're making shots. And I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, because obviously they were making plays. They were making shots. But I don't know. I felt like the ball was getting just a hair stuck on, okay, now it's Grant Nelson's turn to make a one-on-one play. Now it's an Aaron Estrada's turn to make a one-on-one play. Maybe it's Mark Sears' turn to make a one-on-one play. And maybe that's exactly what Nate Oates' offenses was doing. I mean, they ended up getting 32 layups in the game. There were 16 of 32 from the cup, so right at 50%. You obviously want that to be a little bit better. Their points per possession or 1.445. You want that to be a little bit better, but they shot very, very well. They got into the paint. Their turnovers were fairly low. They only turned the basketball over like 13 times. Yeah, they only turned the basketball over 11 times in the games. So, it worked out very well on offense. It was hard to decide. I mean, 40 points in the paint, very, very, very good. I think that obviously you're very happy with the offensive output. The defense, a little bit suspect. I wonder how sustainable things are going to go. And we'll find out. We'll obviously find out. It's only 2 games. You're 2-0. You're going to celebrate that. You moved up from 24 to 22 in the polls. You go take care of. You go take care of South Alabama, and then you get a little bit tougher competition as the season goes on. And you see what happens. You roll the dice. Right now, the guys look really, really good, but it's hard to tell exactly how qualified those wins are. You've moved up in KenPom, I think, to number 8 overall in KenPom. So doing pretty well in basketball. Good little first week, and we'll see how it continues on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Now the ladies, we'll check up on the ladies. Beat Morehead State on Sunday, so they are off to a 3-0 start as well. All right, so back to football real quick. We talked football to get the show started. We talked about Jalen Milroe, his 6 touchdowns. We talked about beating Kentucky. It was kind of one of those games that it was like, meh. I mean, obviously, I don't want to say who cares, because who cares, but who cares because you expect to be Kentucky. You expect to be a team like Kentucky, exactly like Alabama did. And so it's tough to really celebrate these games. I guess if you're Shane Beamer, he would be celebrating these games no matter what. But it's tough to really celebrate a 49-21 win for me, considering I think that's exactly what you should expect to do against a team like Kentucky. Now, you win 49-21 over Kentucky, and you have a great offensive output by Jalen Milroe, 6 touchdowns for him. He's up to over 10 touchdowns in the last 2 games. He's been playing his butt off against LSU and Kentucky, and likely he will be, have another chance to put up 2 big old games against UT Chattanooga and Auburn before he's inevitably subbed off the field, and you let Ty Simpson get some snaps against the Mocs, the dangerous Mocs, as Coach Saban will tell you today. They're second place in their league, man. Watch out. They're a dangerous team. And then obviously Auburn is Auburn. We'll talk about them as the next 2 weeks go on. But Jalen Milroe, is he in Heisman contention? I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't give him my overall vote, but I think he's definitely in the conversation for Heisman Trophy contender. I think you still got to give it to Jaden Daniels for what they did, beating Florida, 52-35, putting up a big number against Florida, not letting Alabama beat them twice. Congratulations to LSU. Now, Florida is pretty terrible. I've got them rated pretty low in my SEC power rankings that you can read right there at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. We encourage you to do that each and every Sunday morning. We put that out. I've got Florida rated 10th in the SEC, and I've got LSU rated 3rd in the SEC? No, 4th in the SEC, right behind Ole Miss, despite their loss to Georgia. 10th for Florida, exactly, and 2nd for Alabama. Congratulations to LSU. I'm still giving my Heisman vote, if I have a Heisman vote, to Jaden Daniels. But for Jalen Milroe, I think Jalen Milroe has asserted himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Now, he's not the best quarterback in the SEC, but he just finds ways to get it done. I mean, 15 of 22, yeah, he had the interception, 3 touchdowns to different receivers. I think you got to give him great consideration for, SEC Offensive Player of the Year. If Jaden Daniels didn't exist, then Jalen Milroe would be your SEC Offensive Player of the Year for his ability to run and pass. The thing is, Jaden Daniels is just doing it at a more crisp rate for LSU. Now, he doesn't have near the defense that Jaden Daniels has behind him. But Jalen Milroe, you got to admit, from where Alabama was the first week of the season to where they are now, week 11, you got to admit the Alabama offense has grown night and day, has grown 10% every week. I think that Jalen Milroe, they said it on the broadcast, once they settled on Jalen Milroe being the quarterback for the Ole Miss game, they started to develop the offense further and more around him and his skill set. I think you're seeing that. Against Kentucky, he was very, very decisive against the Wildcats throughout the entire game. Yes, I know he had the interception. I know he had, 7 incompletions. It was 15 of 22, but he had 234 passing yards. He averaged, he's averaging he's averaging a pretty good 17 yards per reception, basicling per pass. He hit Kobe Prentice for a touchdown, Amari Niblack for a touchdown, Roydell Williams for a touchdown. He's throwing passes to all kinds of players. I think that his decisiveness has grown more and more as weeks have gone on, and you got to combine that with the offensive line improving around Jalen Milroe, but 2, you got to give Tommy Rees a lot of credit. I think a lot of people have been unfairly against Tommy Rees through the first couple of weeks of the season. You got to give Tommy Rees a lot of credit. 49 points is plenty of points. Now, you didn't get any points. Really, you got to give 7 points to the defense because of the strip from Terry and Arnold and Caleb Downs putting you down at the 1-yard line. You got tush pushed in from Jalen Milroe. I guess that counted as an offensive touchdown that the defense really gifted you on a silver platter. So I guess there's 1 touchdown that the defense really gifted you. But outside of that, you straight up scored 42 points on your own. I think you will, combined with the defense that you've got right now, there might not be any better, there might not be any better team in the country. I know Michigan didn't throw a single pass in the second half against Penn State to beat Penn State, but I don't think there's any better team in the country right now offensively than Alabama. I know Georgia's playing at a very high level. Obviously, they put up 50-something points against Ole Miss as well. They're playing at a high level. It's going to be great to see that matchup in a couple of weeks. But I like Alabama's chances because of Jalen Milroe, his skill set, what he can do for you offensively, throwing the ball down the field, extending the play with his legs. And when he does decide to take off and run, oh, watch out. It's 5, 7, 8 yards of play. He ended up with 4.5 yards of carry this past week. But you got to factor in a couple of sacks right there as well. So I think that Jalen Milroe, as a defensive weapon, they didn't get any sacks this week, actually. Kentucky's defense, as a defensive weapon, as an offensive weapon, Jalen Milroe is something special to behold. Now, very disappointing that you didn't get any help from anybody else, not Penn State and Indiana Lions, even with Jim Harbaugh suspended. We haven't talked about that at all since in the last couple of weeks. We didn't talk about that at all last week. Michigan sign stealing and their developments. Look, what happened last week is he said, she said, BS. The Penn State coaches tried to get Jim Harbaugh suspended, and that's exactly what they did. They got him suspended. They got him suspended for last week. We'll see if the suspension holds. Jim Harbaugh has some sort of an appeal out right there in the court system. We'll see how, if that appeal gets answered, if he can come back and return. They get Ohio State in a couple of weeks. Michigan, without Jim Harbaugh, wins over Penn State 24-15. They get Maryland this week, and then Ohio State next week to finish out the rest of the season. So we'll see if his suspension will hold. Florida State also, you can't count on Mario Cristobal to do your dirty work, even though he used to work at Alabama. He lost. His Miami Hurricanes lost to Florida State 20-27. Jordan Travis with a so-so game, 19 of 21 for 265 with a touchdown. And Florida State ended up winning there to stay undefeated. They're 10-0. It's going to be interesting. They don't have that many more difficult games left on their season either. Florida State has North Alabama, and then they're at Florida. They are at Florida for their final game of the season, and they are playing a to be determined. Either going to be playing Louisville or North Carolina, maybe North Carolina State. It's going to be to be determined who they play in the ACC championship game. We'll see how they finish out the rest of the year. Washington had a chance to lose as well. They were in a close game with Utah. Utah couldn't get it done for Alabama, losing 28-35. So Washington, their last couple of games look like they're going to be manageable. They're playing Oregon State, who's right there at 8-2. They're at Oregon State. Might be a tough game for them, but they played in tough games in tough spots before, and then they are at home against Washington State, who's 4-6. So their last two games look pretty manageable, and then they'll probably have a rematch with Oregon the way the schedule's breaking in the Pac-12 for the championship. And speaking of Oregon, they beat USC, so they are still 9-1. They're playing Arizona State and then Oregon State for their last two games. If they win those two games, they're going to be in a rematch with Washington for the Pac-12 championship game. You couldn't get any help from TCU this week. They lost by 3 to Texas. So Texas is still one game ahead of Alabama as the college football playoff comes out. Texas with what? They've got at Iowa State and Texas Tech remaining, and they will likely play Oklahoma State, or if things break differently, maybe a rematch with Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. So that's really the kind of your look at the teams right in front of Alabama. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, CJ Watson, thanks for tuning in. Big wins by football and basketball. You're right this weekend. You're absolutely right. We're going to see how they can respond this coming up week against UTC, and just how and they're really going to have to get healthy. We'll talk about the health as the rest of the week goes on. My man Wendell Hare, Iron Bowl shaping up to be a good one. Oh man, Iron Bowl, Auburn getting another big win this weekend. What is a win over Arkansas really worth? I mean, what's it? What's 3 wins over what Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt really worth? And I guess they're going to get a 4th win in a row over New Mexico State. I guess they're going to get that 4th win over New Mexico State, so they'll be on a 4-game winning streak when Alabama comes to town. I mean, it's not going to get them ranked, but they're definitely they're already bowl eligible. I don't know. I mean, you beat UMass, California, and Sanford. You've lost to any good team that you've played. Alabama, if Alabama treats them like they treated Kentucky this weekend against, and takes them seriously, then I think that Alabama will come away with a big comfortable win against Auburn. Auburn's offense, they've shown that they're really one-dimensional. They've struggled passing the football. So I think that Alabama, they can stick to keeping them struggling passing. Auburn, Birmingham bowl bound. You're exactly right. You're going to get a $5 ticket to the Birmingham Bowl. You can too. That'll be a fun. That'd be a fun game to watch. They'll play some team from the ACC. They'll play like Wake Forest or something like that. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Alabama, the new playoff poll rankings come out on Tuesday. Alabama basketball will be playing during that time, so hopefully you'll have a lot of eyes on the South Alabama basketball game. I think Alabama should be ahead of Oregon. Oregon doesn't have any as good of wins as Alabama does on its schedule. But obviously, I don't get a vote, and neither do you. You let us know what your playoff rankings would be. I think you got to have it right now with Georgia's win over Ole Miss. Georgia 1, probably Ohio State 2. I give it Florida State 3, Washington 4. Washington 4, Michigan 5, Texas 6, Alabama 7 is probably what I'm going to go with. Alabama 7, and then Oregon 8 after that. I think Oregon's very good, but their resume their resume is not near as good as Alabama's is. And so I'm going to put them right behind Alabama. And Alabama's still going to need some help. I think Georgia has to continue to be at number 1. And Georgia, they've got They've got a joke of a week this week, don't they? Who does Georgia have? They're playing somebody bad, right? They're playing. Oh no, they're playing the only good game of the week this week in the SEC. Excuse me, they're playing at Tennessee. So yeah, they are playing somebody bad, quote unquote. I didn't mean that as a joke, but now I do. I didn't realize that they're playing at Tennessee. They're playing the only real good game in the league this week at 2:30 on CBS at Tennessee. So yeah, and then they're playing at Georgia Tech, and then they're going to have Alabama. So they don't get a joke of a week this week like Alabama does with UTC. They've already had their schedule was front loaded with a lot of jokes. They had UAB, but they had UAB, Ball State, and UT Martin at the beginning of their season. So they got that out of the way. They're in the middle of I guess the toughest part of their season. Give them props for beating Missouri, beating Ole Miss 52-17, and I guess they're I think they'll probably beat the brakes off of Tennessee as well. Probably 35-14, 35-14, 38-14, somewhere in that range as well. Georgia hopefully will look. They got Brock Bowers back this past week. He is a machine. He's an animal. We'll talk about Alabama's matchup with Georgia as the days tick by. I think we're gonna have an interesting week. I believe I've got a couple of guests lined up. We will have to confirm with them as the rest of the weeks go on. And so, yeah, we hope you've had a lot of fun with us, hanging out with us on a Monday. You can always watch us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about at all, and we should talk about it. We woke up on Sunday to Texas A&M firing Jimbo Fisher. And then we woke up on Monday to Mississippi State firing Zach Arnett. And so two crazy moves happening in the SEC this week. Two crazy moves happening in the SEC with Jimbo Fisher. Now, look, Jimbo, the only reason it's crazy is because his buyout was, what, $75, $77, $74 million, somewhere in that range. You're seeing any of those three numbers get thrown out there by different media syndicates. So let's just call it $77 million, their buyout to Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, you can fire me and send me anywhere you want to go in the world for $77 million. But no, all they're telling him to do is clear out his office in College Station. A pretty good little deal there. Look, Jimbo never could get it done. He had the 1 year in 2020 where he finished, fifth in the country, sixth in the country, finished right there second in the SEC West, third overall in the entire in the league that year. But you lost to Alabama by like 28 points. I think it was 48-20, 48-24 in that game. Look, A&M, you never got over the hump. You spent a lot of money on NIL. 2 years ago? You got the number one overall class the first year the NIL came out, and it's okay. I don't even care. I have no begrudging that you did that, and that's how you got that class. No begrudging at all. Good for you. Go do it again. But you couldn't develop that class. A lot of that class did transfer out. I hated the comments of people that day after that first signing class saying, "Oh, they're all going to transfer out." I was like, man, wait and see. But no, a lot of them did, and some of them went right to LSU and went to other big SEC programs. Denver Harris comes to mind. Denver Harris already on the ropes at LSU and kind of off that team as well. Look, so you paid big money for that big recruiting class, but you couldn't develop it. You couldn't hold it together. You couldn't build it for the future. Yeah, LSU, A&M, you've had some bad luck with quarterback injuries in the past. Kyler Murray was a good little quarterback for you. No, not Kyler Murray. What's the Kellen Mond? Kellen Mond. He was a good little quarterback for you, but he wasn't great. He couldn't get you over the hump. I think that Jimbo Fisher, you totally underperformed at Texas A&M, and the only thing that was crazy about you getting fired was the big buyout. It stinks. Does it stink that you got fired in the middle of the year? Yeah, it does. You don't want anybody fired in the middle of the season, and obviously Coach Saban said as much. I don't really ever pull for any coach to lose his job unless they really deserve it. I don't really think that Jimbo was in the he really deserves it camp, but I believe he was in the okay, that's an understandable move camp. Texas A&M, they're expecting high results. My biggest question was, is Texas A&M an elite football job? I think that it is based off the money that they have to spend. Sure, the location's a little bit funky, and now that they're not going to be the only team in Texas recruiting in the SEC, and that's going to be a little chink in their armor. That was a little bit of a gold star or a little flower in their cap, a feather in their cap, used for Texas A&M. But I think it is an elite job. They spend at an elite rate. Their facilities are top notch, and their fans are well represented. Their fans travel very well, and their fans are very passionate. So I do think it's an elite football job. And Jimbo Fisher getting fired just goes to show how passionate they are about winning in the SEC as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who they hire for Mississippi State. Firing Zach Arnett, you can see that coming a mile away. You fire Zach Arnett, what, 9-10 games into his tenure, replacing Mike Leach, and rest in peace, Mike Leach. Look, you replace Mike Leach, and it's like, as soon as his funeral happened and you got in charge, you fired half his coaching staff, you replaced his coaching staff, you replaced his philosophy on offense, and you expected things to work, and they absolutely didn't. And you've proven, look, every time I saw Zach Arnett in the media or on the sidelines, he acted like a little jerk, like an uncontrolled, petulant child, emotional little jerk. He acted like there was no way his team had a chance to beat Alabama at any point. We listened to any press conferences that week. I think that Zach Arnett was in way over his head as an SEC head football coach. And maybe he was done a disservice by receiving that head football coaching job right after, right in that midst, that being his very first head football coaching job. But I think that Zach Arnett just proved that he wasn't ready to be a leader of a program. And man, and really, the wins and losses were just representative of the fact that his program was really not going anywhere under his leadership. I know that people can say, "Oh, it was only his first year. It was only his first year," but you could tell that he had lost the locker room already in just his first year. So both coaches getting fired. Whispers about Sam Howell, not Sam Howell. Whispers about Sam Pittman being next in the SEC. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, as it is that point in the year, as programs are making transitions, we will see how it happens throughout the rest of the SEC. But for now, so long Jimbo and so long Zach Arnett, as both coaches getting dismissed from their respective programs. Very interesting. Both coaches getting fired after playing one another this year. Obviously, you can see why the coach who lost 51-14, wasn't that it? Losing this weekend. Obviously, you can see why. 51-10. Excuse me, Mississippi State losing. You can see why Zach Arnett lost his job. Interesting to fire a guy after winning 51-10, but people saying that Texas A&M's sources or decisions to fire Jimbo Fisher were made on Thursday. It just goes to show how much respect winning or beating Mississippi State is really given in this league. That's a win you're expected to get. That's a win you're expected to get each and every week if you're a top-tier program in the SEC. So that's going to pretty much do it for our program today. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to have a guest. I don't want to say so far because I don't want to spoil it in case we don't get that guest. But we had a lot of fun on the show today talking about Alabama's big win on the hard court. They're 2-0. They're going to be playing South Alabama on Tuesday at 7 p.m. You can follow along with us at Joe Gaither 6 on all the social media devices right there at Joe Gaither 6 or at BamaCentral for our coverage of Alabama basketball tomorrow at 7 p.m. Check out our coverage from Nick Saban's press conference today. Nick Saban and NATO. It's both talking to the media today. You can read about that at BamaCentral.com. You can always check out the show at YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow us and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. We have programs each and every Monday through Friday. We try to put out programs and interview great guests, and we will try to continue to do that the rest of the week. Yes, Alabama's playing UTC, but we want to take it seriously. We want to start getting you ready for the Iron Bowl as well. Alabama basketball playing on Tuesday, playing South Alabama, and then carrying on as the season starts to get serious the first week of December for Alabama basketball as well. It was a great week, great weekend. Alabama football beating Kentucky, clinching the SEC West. 2 more football games remaining. We'll cover it all right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.